Ever since back in high school, me and my best friend Kevin have very much enjoyed to be watching videos about urban exploring where people go into some old abandoned buildings such as churches, schools, hospitals, you name it. You see them how to get this thrill to do some exploring some old abandoned buildings. Even that some may have even alleged to be haunted. But we didn't do our own exploring until we were like in our senior year of high school. But at first, we did explore some smaller buildings out in our town, like some old abandoned warehouses or small houses in the neighborhood. But after we actually had just finished high school, we kept doing our urban exploring. And now we'd had our own car, we decided to drive outside of town to find places that might have been abandoned for years. I mean, we live in a pretty much a medium-sized city with a population of 20 to 25,000 people. So it's a very much likely that we would find some any old abandoned structures on the countryside. Even if there's an old abandoned farmland or anything like that, we did some more exploring, and before we even went there, we did do some research of the place, like see if it was actually still private owned. We we didn't want to do any trespassing just in case, and we also wanted to make sure that the place were in fact still abandoned and not inhabited by anyone. Of course, we also been aware of squatters that lives in abandoned buildings, which happens a lot actually. But there's only one time that we literally that scared us so much that we literally stopped with our urban exploring. This happened when we were both 22 during the summer. We actually have been thinking of doing some exploring a new place. It was actually Kevin who told me about this abandoned church that was outside of town. And we were decided why not going there in one afternoon. So on the way, I did ask Kevin if he had any backstory about this particular building, why it was abandoned, or and how long it was has been being used, like that. He told me that no, unfortunately, I couldn't find much. Only there was a building in the early 1900s and it was in use for 50 to 60 years or something like that, but eventually it was abandoned and it hasn't even been used by anyone. I have asked around by a few people who is actually aware of this place, like my parents, grandparents, and other people I know. They all told me the same thing. It has been abandoned for years. No one owns it, and seems no one even wants to take care of it. So I thought that might be a good place to go. So when we arrived, well, we had to walk a little bit a distance first because somehow the road was not even well kept anymore. But I also heard from Kevin that when we were driving, oh yeah, I forgot to mention one thing. Yeah, it's are rumors that this place is supposed to be haunted. And you tell me that now, and when we were just about to close to arrive there, but we actually found the place after being living in the car, and we walked maybe 5 to 6 minutes or something like that, or there was at least a few minutes of being walking. The building was a medium size with a clock tower, a big building like brick buildings like that. We at first the main door was completely sealed, like boarded up. So we had to find another place to get in. But we had also decided if we couldn't find anything, I mean, a way inside, we just walk around in different in around the area, and then we go home. Since we didn't want to break anything just to get inside. So we looked around, and we did find a back door that was pretty much open. So we went inside, looked around. After about 15 minutes or so, we started hearing some sounds. At first, we didn't know what is actually what is sound the sound was like. It's a little bit hard to describe, but we were a little bit inside of the church, and at the where we were, we couldn't even say exactly what it was sounding like. So we looked around and followed the sound while we was whispering, and we saw there was this room, and the door was open. And inside the room there was actually a number of people wearing black robes and white masks, and they were doing something. And as they were doing something, me and Kevin were real baffled. Apparently, we weren't the only ones here. But then, both me and Kevin looked in silence. We were just, well, one of them, assumed the leader, took a dead rabbit, stabbed it while he was holding it in his hand. And its blood was running on the floor, and this leader said something. I mean, it sounded like a complete different language or something. I don't even know what it was saying. But seeing this happening, it scared both of us. And as we moved, this group of people heard us, and they looked, even though they didn't even saw us clearly. And Kevin and I was like really panicked, and he said, "Brian, we need to go." And the leader said, like, yelled out, "Grab them!" Like with a deep, booming voice. Which made me and Kevin took off, running fast throughout the church. We got inside, but we didn't even stop running. We didn't stop until we were far away. I mean, the group of people didn't even follow us. We talked about what happened. It was actually Kevin who realized, he was like, "Dude, I think that was a cult." And I even realized myself, he was right. Because they were wearing black robes and white masks, and they stabbed a dead rabbit and allowed the blood to be poured on the ground like that. It makes perfect sense. So we actually went back to my car, and we went back inside town and went to the sheriff's station, informed them about it. They later went there, and we were later told that the church was empty, but the dead rabbit and the blood on the floor was still there. So they believed us. And they actually, not only that, they found a signs of that this particular group of people have been there multiple times throughout the year. Later, shortly afterwards, we were informed that the church had been demolished. And it was probably for a good thing too, because knowing for a fact that this church was a hangout spot for this particular cult. But ever since that happened, there was still more mention about the cult. There were rumors that this cult may have moved on to a different place. Let's hope for that too, because I don't want to run into them ever again. But ever since that particular event, me and Kevin decided to stop doing exploring from that day on. Even though we did enjoy it much, but they also made us stop watching urban exploring videos on YouTube. And we were often asked by that, but we refused to even want to talk much about it. But this is the only time I want to telling about the story. So thank you for all for listening. My name is Jake. I have been having this interest of exploring abandoned buildings for a while now, and I've been doing this for about 2 years. And I also brought my girlfriend Olivia into this interest, and we actually haven't just done this on our own. Sometimes we even invite my friend Bobby and his girlfriend Gina to this. And it happens that either the four of us explored some old abandoned buildings in town, or is it just me and Olivia? Or sometimes it's just by myself, but it's just like that. We had explored all kinds of buildings in town, old abandoned warehouses, old houses, or even farmlands. But one day, Bobby informs that he heard about an abandoned house outside of town. He tells us that about it, and we decided to go there the next day in the early afternoon for some exploring. So, but the next day, we drove out there in my car, and on the way, Bobby informed us about the history about this place and what he managed to find. There was this like a mansion style house. It was built back in 1915 and belonged to a wealthy family, but which they also eventually lost their youngest daughter to the Spanish flu back in 1918. And their oldest son died there when he was in his 20s and due to an accident. Since then, the family or the parents couldn't have the heart to live there anymore, so they abandoned the place. And ever since then, it's some people saying who have been there it's been haunted by the son and the daughter who died there. Some people have tried to repair the place and to even try to live there, but all attempts failed, only leaving shortly afterwards or something. Gina said that it might be because of the ghosts. And even though me and Olivia are strong believers in the paranormal, but we said it might also be that, or maybe because the house has been abandoned for a while. As you know, black moles are usually is a big health concern, and if no one's attend after the building for a while, the structure's interior might also be in a bad condition. You know, rotten wood can collapse on you, and it makes sense. But after a while, we arrived. We parked the car just outside the entrance. We walked in, and by using the entrance, we could see the old parts and some that actually have been replaced. That was based on the story of Bobby told us. So, since this was a big house, we decided to split up into teams to explore the house better. Me and Olivia, we decided to explore the bottom, at least the downstairs of the house. First, we went to the kitchen. Sure, there was all abandoned some things there, like it's like no one had even taken care of the things. But we did find some signs of people have been there recently, like graffiti and all that, but also that some people perhaps have been living there. So, but after a while, me and Olivia went back to the entrance, where we saw Bobby and Gina running down the staircase and yelling us to run fast out of there. And before we could do anything to even to ask why, we saw this old man with this long beard running and yelling nonsense right after them, which made all of us running out. We ran to the car, hopped in, and I started the car and drove off as the man was so close to the car. And even on the ride back home, we asked them, what happened up there? Gina at first was silent, while Bobby was, well, freaked out in the back seat. But Gina told us that while they was exploring upstairs, they found the old bedrooms where that was made for a young girl and one for a boy, and the master bedroom. But as they were in the master bedroom, they actually saw that the bed was still there, and it was someone in the bed. At first, they thought that there was something in the bed that made look something like someone was in there, maybe an animal or something. But as they saw it was an old man who looked at them with terrifying, angry face at them. He growled and said something like, "Get out of my house now!" Which made both Gina and Bobby scared. But then the man sat up in bed, which somehow snapped both Bobby and Gina out of the fear, and they both left the room running out. And that's when we saw them running from the staircase. And we drove home, and ever since then we had decided to only explore more closer to home and also to be careful. We did inform the police about this particular incident. And as far as we understand, or at least heard about it, the man was taken away. And we were informed, though, maybe not to be doing this again because the building was so old it may have even could have collapsed on us. We totally understand from that part. So yeah, but it didn't stop us from continuing to do our urban exploring. But it made us to be more cautious and more careful about any potential threats that could happen. So thanks everyone for listening to this story. Thank you.